Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to this chat and learn of Power to Fly. My name is Erika Molina, and I'm going to be your moderator today. So first of all, I would just like to give you some housekeeping. And if you want to turn your camera on, please do so. I would like to see your beautiful faces. You don't have to be Instagram perfect, and don't worry about privacy. Unless you come off of mute, you will be shown in the recording. Did I mention recording? Yes, I did. We're recording this for you to have it later, to watch it later in case you would like to. And you can find in YouTube the chat and learn too. Another thing is that if you want to chat with us, if you want to write your questions in the chat, please do so. And if you want to remain anonymous, please just write to me privately and I will ask the question for you. And if you want to follow us on social media, please do so at Power to Fly. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can watch more chat and learns that we have had in the past and we will have in the future. So now let me introduce you to this amazing speaker that we have today. So her name is Adunola Adeshola, and she is a career strategist who helps high achieving corporate professionals secure new jobs they love at companies they love. She's also a Forbes contributor, and her expertise has been featured in the New York Times, Fast Company, Bloomberg, and other publications. Her clients in dozens of industries have landed job offers at top companies just like LinkedIn, Spotify, Google, Vogue, Co., and other companies that they have loved. So welcome, Adunola. Please just put your hands together to Adunola today. And I don't know if you would like to add something else to this amazing bio that I just shared with the people.
No, I mean, that was pretty good. So I'm super excited to be here and to jump in and help you get to that place where you feel confident breaking into that new industry that you're curious about.
Awesome, perfect. So now we are going to have some questions that you guys pre-submitted before to our website. So thank you for that. And so let's begin. So could you please share some advice on how to identify if we are ready for a career transition and what should we evaluate about this?
Yeah. So I think that number one, if you're thinking about a career transition, then you're probably ready for it. But I do think that you do want to ask yourself, what is making you want to leave where you're at, right? So I like to think of it in three ways. You want to think about the work that you're doing, the culture, and the company. So when you're thinking about these things, you want to ask yourself, which of these three things are missing in your career, right? So when you think about what you're unhappy about, is it the work? Do you not like the work that you're doing? Do you feel like you could be doing more challenging work, or are you just not even connected to the work that you're doing at all? If you feel like you could be doing more challenging work, then maybe it's time for you to move up into that next level in your career, where you in the industry that you're at, and just move into that senior role or that next stage. But if you feel like you're not connected to the work that you're doing at all, then that could mean that you aren't ready for that next industry change. You're ready to try something new and a different experience, right? And then if it's the company that you feel like is making you unhappy, then I would think about, okay, what is it about the company? Do I not align with the type of services they provide, or the type of clients they work with, or the goals that they have? Because it's kind of twofold here too. So if you don't like what the company does, if you don't like the things that the people that they serve, then you probably are ready for that industry change. But if you like the company, however, you just don't like that particular company, then maybe it's time to shift into a new company in that same industry. So that's something that you want to consider. And then the last thing when it comes to the culture is, what is it about the culture that you don't align with? Is it that when you think about if you're unhappy, while you're unhappy in your career, if you think about I'm unhappy because of the culture, it's toxic, it's draining, it doesn't align with me anymore, then one option could be to find a better culture in your industry. But if you just kind of feel like all the cultures in this industry are I keep having the same kind of experience in this industry, then that could also be a sign that you're ready for a career change. So I would say first start with what's missing in your career. Because for example, I had a client who was like, I'm ready for a career change. I'm over this industry. She had been in a number of different industries over like the 10 years of her career. And she was just like, every company in this industry is the same. I don't want to be here. But once I got her to start asking herself these three questions on what is it about this experience that she wants to change, she realized that it was the culture. And she really just needed to get better at choosing the right type of cultures in that industry. And she ended up being able to take her career to the next level in that industry, doing work that she still enjoyed. So I would say that you want to ask yourself those three things to really get to the root of it, because even if you do change industries, it'll give you a better perspective on what to really make sure that you're looking out for, even as you go after that next role in that new industry.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you for. I remember when I changed the industry, I was recruited first, and then I decided to be a project manager assistant, and it was like, what? But but it was really, really cool. So let's continue with another question. So it says, what should be our go-to strategy for breaking into a new industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of strategies that you want. The good thing is that there are, let's say it like this, there are strategies, right? That's a good thing. There are strategies that you can implement, and there are a number of things that you can do. The first thing that I recommend for those of you who are like, I'm ready for a career change, a lot of times, I mean, I know that a lot of times people are like, I'm ready for a career change into tech, but I know that might be shifting now with all of the different news of layoffs. But whatever you're wanting to make that career change into, number one, I recommend first getting curious, because a lot of times, let's just use like the tech world, for example. I'll hear a lot of people say like, oh, I want to move into tech. I want to move into tech. And it's like, okay, where? What do you want to do in tech? Like there's so many even industries in tech today. There's, fintech, there is biotech, there is even banking has a tech side. There is educational tech, educational tech. There is so many different layers to tech these days. And so even that alone can be overwhelming. And so I recommend, number one, getting curious about where do you want to be, and then find your sweet spot. So I think of your sweet spot as like where your expertise and your interests align. So if we go back to our school days when we had the Venn diagram, like you can literally make a Venn diagram of like, here are my expertise. Here are the things I'm really good at. Here are my interests and what I really feel like I will be excited to do in this next role of my career. And then what are the roles and companies that allow me to execute in this way? Like, what are the companies that align with my interests and where I can really bring my level of experience to these opportunities? Because what that's going to do is help you really clarify the right type of roles for you. Because even going back into the tech side, you can say that, you want to move into tech, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a tech degree to move into tech. Like I've had many clients who moved into a tech role, for example, doing like global policy or doing human resources or doing accounting. So I would recommend thinking about what are the industry that you really want to thrive in? And then what are the roles that you want to do? Because unbeknownst to you, there could be something that you're doing right now that you can literally slide on over into for that next industry that you're interested in. So really get curious about that. And then the other thing that you want to do is start thinking about how can you leverage the experience that you already have? Because some of the biggest misconceptions about changing your career is that you have to start over, you have to take a pay cut, start from the bottom. We're not starting from the bottom like Drake, okay? We want to make sure that you are very clear on what you're looking for, what's interesting to you, and where does your experience already connect for the roles that you're interested in, so that you're not just taking whatever you can get, getting your foot in the door, but you're really being able to position yourself as a valuable asset for the next opportunities in those industries that you're interested in.
Love it. I love it. I honestly love it. And since you were talking about that, it's like, well, yeah, I it happened to me.
You're like, that
That's
sounds
how
like
it feels. So now I have this question that says, how do you suggest positioning yourself as a suitable candidate in a new role and industry? What catches the eyes of recruiters when they're looking at the resume of a candidate with no industry-related experience?
Yeah, so I definitely think that when it comes to being able to switch industries, number one, I think that you kind of have to reframe how you think about your experience, because just because excuse me, just because you have no industry experience, one second, I have to cough again. Just because you have no industry experience doesn't mean you don't have the right experience, right? So I would recommend first reframing how you think about your experience, because too often when people are making career changes, they just negate all the experience that they have. And they feel like they don't have any experience or any value because they're now the underdog, in a sense, going after this new industry. And so I would recommend, if you are in a place where you already have, because to make a career change means you're already in another career, right? So I would think about, okay, what is the experience that I actually do have that makes me feel like I can even excel in this new opportunity, right? Because one, you need to feel confident in yourself to elicit confidence in others, right? So you have to be able to understand, what is the thing that I already bring to the table that aligns with these opportunities? Because companies don't want to hire someone who says they have no experience. Companies aren't really, except you're going for an entry-level role. But again, if you're making a career change, we're talking about how can you make a career change without starting over. So when you're going after these roles where they're at a mid-level, senior level, whatever the case is, they're not looking for someone who has no experience. And so you have to be able to carry the mindset that, like, I already have a level of experience, and then focus on how can you show them that you can do these roles, not despite of your unique background, but because of your unique background. Because even just that mindset shift when you're approaching your career change like this, it will help you be able to start thinking about, okay, what are the results that I brought to the table? What are the stories that I need to start telling? What are the examples that I need to start giving, right? And another piece is, how can you change the language of how you talk about your accomplishments, right? Because the way that you talked about your accomplishments in one industry probably will not resonate with the next industry, right? So I always kind of say, like, you have to break up with the way that you used to talk about yourself, because what used to connect, like what people will be like, oh, I get that in your current company or in your current industry, somebody else can be like, what? Or they're like, oh, okay, when you say like this is what you really mean. And when it comes to your resume or the interview process, nobody wants to feel like, okay, what are you talking about, right? And so I recommend, even when you decide on what your sweet spot is, decide on what is the value that you bring to the table, look at your resume and literally take an audit of, like, okay, does this align with how the job descriptions are talking about what I want to say that I did, right? Am I using the right language? Maybe if you're wanting to jump from healthcare to finance, maybe you won't talk about, maybe you won't necessarily talk about hospitals, right? But instead of calling it hospitals, you'll talk about just the work that you did there that aligns with what the next company is looking for, right? And so really looking at how you're even speaking about your accomplishments, and really like deleting the words that aren't necessary or distracting from your value, and instead replacing those or enhancing that bullet so that it really does speak the language, so that the companies who are reading your resume are like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we need. That's what we're looking for. Because that's really how you're going to be able to make that career change without starting over. When you first understand what the value is that you bring because of your past experience, and when you're able to really communicate that in a way that doesn't make them shaky about whether or not you can do that role.
And sometimes it can be really scary, right? Because we don't know what we can offer sometimes. And it was like, that happened to me. And I was like, oh, I don't know how to do this. But my manager was really, really amazing. And she was like, hey, I will teach you. And that's something that I really appreciated, because I could learn. We are capable of more things than we thought, and we cannot find out unless we try it, right? So thank you. Thank you for that. So this person says, I am looking to move out of live entertainment. How can I make my skills seem less niche?
Yeah, that's a good question. I love that question because it kind of puts some practical, it's like a practical question to what I just shared, right? So when you're thinking about like moving out of, let's say, live entertainment or any industry, you want to really focus less on who you did the work for and what you did that's valuable in the work that you did, right? So make it less about the entertainment. Like, let's say you're moving into there's a couple of different ways. My mind is always going. Okay, so there's a couple of different things, because there's two different type of industry changes, right? You can make an industry change for example, someone in live entertainment could be in marketing and they want to move from live entertainment to corporate retail, right? But they still want to be in marketing. And then there still could be someone who's in live entertainment and they want to do something completely different from live entertainment marketing, and they want to move into I don't know, like something else outside of marketing and live entertainment. But let's say this person is in marketing, but they want to move from live entertainment to corporate retail, right? And still do marketing. Then that means that you don't need to talk about maybe the entertainers that you worked with, or the fact that they work at you worked at concerts, or whatever that looks like, to talk about the marketing skills that you bring to the table. Instead, you probably want to highlight how you worked on these campaigns, you built this organic reach, or you did these specific things, and speak about it and make it less about the people you did it for and more about the results that you brought to the table that the next company is looking for. And so it really isn't about niche or not niche. It really is just like, how do I just talk about myself and what I've been able to do in a way that is really relevant to what the next company is looking for? And how can I make sure that I'm not saying anything else that really can make some confusion about what I can do and bring to the table?
Yeah, I agree with that. And okay, so I have a question here. Is this person wants to remain anonymous? Yeah. So this person is asking, once you are transitioning to another career or to another position and everything, what's the average amount of time it takes a person to secure the job in this year?
It depends. I mean, I think that we kind of also have to remove like the stigma of changing careers. Like, what if changing careers isn't really that big of a deal, right? Like, I think that our career, number one, is full of twists and turns. Like, it's not a linear path. I like to say that it's not a Sunday drive on the freeway going nowhere. Like, it is full of different twists, turns, routes, paths that you didn't even think that you could take. And so what if it's not a big deal, right? Because if that's the case, then what if it doesn't have to take you too long to make that career change? What if it takes you just as long to get a new job in your current industry as it takes to get a new job somewhere else? And so in that regard, like, you know, in my coaching program that Career Redefine, I work with my clients to make those pivots into new industries and to be able to take their career to the next level in the industry that they're in. And oftentimes the time that it takes to do both is the same. You know, sometimes for that person, it could take 6 weeks. Like, I literally had a client I remember in the middle of the pandemic, she had been in HR for such a long time. She fell into HR. So many people can say, like, I fell into this job, or I just got it. She stayed in this industry. She didn't want to be in it at all. She wanted to actually move into communications. And when the pandemic happened, it was kind of like that wake up call that so many people had, where it's like, okay, what do I really want to do in my life? And she joined our program, and she was able to land a new role within like 6 weeks in this communications industry, she was like a corporate communication specialist, doing the work that she wanted to do at this new company, because she mastered how to talk about her value, how to really make sure that they understood how the value that she brought from this previous industry is just as relevant as the next candidate who's been in that industry, the industry that she wanted to move into. And the same with one of my clients, who he had been in finance for a long time, and he wanted to move into marketing. And I keep talking about communications, people, but sometimes I just get on this rabbit hole. So he wants to move into marketing. He had been in communications for about 8 years. And I mean, he's been in finance for about 8 years, but he loved communications. He loved marketing. And it took him a little bit longer to be able to make that transition, because he really needed to kind of get into the mindset of like, I can actually do this and it's actually possible for me. But it probably took him about like 6 months to really kind of get into that space of like, okay, here's how I talk about my value. Here's how I do this. Here's how I make it happen. But the beauty of it is that once he actually like locked into this, he ended up getting 4 job offers and ended up taking a job at Sephora, where he was able to combine his finance and marketing skills to do work that he loved. He ended up making like $20K more than he thought that he was even possible for him to make. So I just say also to say that the time isn't really shouldn't be too much of a strong point, because if you kind of focus too much on the time, then that tells me that you haven't really kind of committed to just the progress, right? And so like, just commit to the progress, get started with getting curious, figuring out what are the roles that are that you're capable of doing in these industries, and how can you start talking about yourself, because the progress that you're making is what actually is going to get you to the finish line, right? Regardless of how long that it does take. And again, for some people it can take longer, for some people it can take a shorter amount of time, but really the difference between the person who takes a longer time or shorter amount of time is the person who, one person really believes that they can actually make this happen and they're doing the work to make it happen. And the other person is kind of getting tripped up with the belief that maybe they can't make this happen, or they're focusing on the wrong roles, or, their strategy isn't really in alignment to make this happen. So I want you to think about it from that place, so that you're not paralyzing yourself or sabotaging your efforts, and you're just moving forward. Oh, and I would just say the other piece is that obviously we do have to consider, like, if you are going after a role that you need certifications or another level of experience or qualifications, then that definitely does play a part into how long it could take you. But if you are in a place where you're like, I have this experience already, I just need to figure out how to speak about it in a way that makes me hireable in this new industry, then that is what I just shared with you before I said that.
Thank you. And since you were talking about certifications and everything, we have this person, sorry if I don't pronounce your name well, but it's Adrian, that says, I would like to know if it is possible to break into a new career through professional leadership program.
Yeah, so that's not really the best question, because I'm not really sure what you are asking. So, you're saying, is it possible to break into an industry through a professional leadership program? If I could tackle it the way that I think maybe you're asking, maybe you are already in a professional leadership program, or you're thinking about going back to school, or you're thinking about joining some type of program to help you be able to move into this next industry, if that's the question, then I would say that it just depends, right? Like, it depends on what kind of program are you joining? Is that program designed to help you be able to connect with people or connect with opportunities that get you where you want to go? Does that program have success stories of people who you feel like you can relate to that have been able to accomplish what you want to accomplish, right? And then also, what are you going to be doing in that program to get you there? So what is the tactical things that you're going to be doing to help you accomplish that? Because if it's just that you're going to get this program and then you're going to add it to your resume, and then you're going to just hope that adding it to your resume gets you these opportunities, then I would say probably maybe not, right? Because we have all these other factors of, how are they noticing your resume? How are you getting in front of the right people? What are you saying about yourself? How does this professional leadership program add to your value for the companies that you're looking for? And so I would say, from that note, if you're just like, I need to just go back to school, or I need to get this certification just because I think it's going to make me look better or even feel better, we also want to make sure that it's relevant, right? Does it align, and is it necessary for the roles that you're looking for? So one of the things that you can do is, like, look at the LinkedIn profiles of people who are already in the roles that you want to be in, and see if they have that type of experience at that program that you're thinking about, or if they have a sort of certification that you're thinking about. And if it's just like a reoccurring thing, like everybody has the certification, then yeah, probably you want to get it too, to kind of make yourself a little bit more employable, I guess. But if you're looking at different people's profiles and no one really is talking about this certificate, or maybe two people are talking about it, but most people aren't, then you might not really need it to get to where you want to be. And you also can look at different job descriptions, and if they're like, oh, it would be great if you have this, then it's like, if everyone is talking about it and you feel like it'll help you stand out more, then why not, right? But if it's just something that you feel like is going to make you feel good, because we have to be honest, sometimes we're like, okay, let's go back to school, let's get the certification, because we're going to feel good, right? It's going to be okay, at least I'm doing something, at least it's moving me further. But if it's just going to make you feel good, we need to figure out something else that's going to make you feel good and actually get you results, right? And so I would just kind of think of it from that perspective. Again, if it is a program that you feel like they're actually doing specific things to help you, like, build these relationships, get these opportunities, and what the opportunities and the people align with what you actually feel like you can connect with, then why not, right? But if it's just something that you feel like it would be nice to do and it would be great to experience, then maybe get the job first and then start the program. So it's just an added bonus, and they can pay for it. Maybe, they have opportunities for learning and development as different perks in the job. So really consider those opportunities too, where you're like, okay, maybe I don't need this, but it would be nice to have. And once I even get that job, maybe I'll do it on their dime. Why not?
Yes, I agree with that too. And since there are a lot of sizes of companies, right? This person says, how do I pivot from the small and medium business space to getting on the radar of jobs at bigger professional services companies like Deloitte, Accenture, etc.?
Yeah. So I would say, number one, to not get too caught up with. I think that there's some places where those things on a shallow level matter, like, oh, you went to Ivy League school and you did yada, yada, yada. I didn't do those things, right? So, and I'm sure a lot of you probably didn't do those things. And so I think that, yes, if there are companies that are like, you go to their career page and like everyone came from, like when you talk about Deloitte, Accenture, maybe everyone came from a big four, everyone came from an advisory consulting firm, like, then, it could be a little bit intimidating, right? I understand that. But how can you also, if that even is the case, how can you also still make your career goals happen, right? And so number one, I think it's like not really allowing the fact that you worked at a small firm to be a deterrent to what you want to do next, because everyone starts somewhere, right? And then also thinking about what is the experience that you gain from this experience, like this opportunity that aligns with what these next companies are looking for, right? Because sometimes when you work at these small firms, you actually can have a lot more weigh in on the strategy, on the things that are done or how things are done, because it isn't that many people on the team. So own up to that and leverage that, right? So maybe it was just three of you guys, or for example, I'm thinking about one of my clients who he literally worked at a firm where it was like three people, and he was an economist, and he was at a consulting firm, and it was like three people, and he did so many different hats, and he was very qualified for the roles that he wanted. And similar to this question, he was ready to move into like that tech, not even tech, like he was just ready to move into a global company, like where he was able to do more, have a bigger stakehold in what he was doing. And he was able to make that happen. He moved into a global company, doing exactly what he wanted to do in global policy, making those changes in his career, right? But it starts with being able to say, okay, what is the value that I have been able to gain while working at this company? And how can I own it, right? Like, don't downplay yourself just because you don't have that big name on your resume. Own up to the fact that you've been able to probably wear a lot more hats. You've been able to probably gain a lot more experience than you probably didn't expect to gain, and use that as leverage to show that you're ready for this next stage in your career. And the other thing is, I would say, is you want to start building relationships, right? Like, we all see those people who maybe have a lot of different connections and we're like, oh, I wish I was that kind of person, right? But build the relationships that you wish that you had. Like, it is never too late to start creating a support network. It's never too late to build your tribe of people who can help you throughout your career. So I would say that if you want to work at one of these companies, another thing that you can do is start connecting with people who work at these companies. Maybe find people via LinkedIn, because most people don't realize that LinkedIn is literally the Google of careers. Like, you literally can search for anything, essentially. And so find people who maybe work at these smaller firms, and maybe not work at these bigger companies that you want to work at, and connect with them, have conversations with them, learn about what worked for them and what they did to really help them stand out, and really speak from a place of your value so that they feel confident enough to want to help you as well, right? And so I would recommend that you don't downplay your skills, and that you start building these relationships so that you're able to kind of get more insight on what it really takes to make this happen as well.
Yeah, and you were talking about the relationships and everything, and that was my next question about how to network people, right? And what tips can we have about that? And it was really cool, because sometimes we don't, like, I don't know, maybe we don't take the risk to share with other people or to ask other people, right? Because of what they're going to think about it. I don't know, right? But yeah, I think that's really important. And if you see I have a dog in there, that is kind of so let's continue with the next question. So could you share some advice on how to negotiate our compensation when making a career pivot? This person says, I can't afford to take a pay cut.
Yeah, so I would say that, like we talked about a little bit earlier, like some of the misconceptions is that you have to take a pay cut, or you have to start over, or that essentially the experience, because essentially when you have all of these misconceptions boil down to, my experience in my previous role, in my previous career, is less valuable than the experience that I want to gain in this next experience, in this next company. And that's just not true. Okay. So if you leave with anything, I want you to stop discounting and discrediting the experience that you've already gained, that you've already worked so hard to accomplish. Because I could imagine that every single one of you here who are here on your own time, no one forced you to be here. You are people who are ambitious, who are driven, who are really intentional about the career that you're building. And so to think that you have to like forget everything that you've already accomplished to be able to accomplish the next thing is just false, right? And so it's the same thing when it comes to when you're wanting to get move into this new role without taking a compensation, without taking a pay cut. Number one, you need to find roles that are already paying at the level that you want to make, right? Or paying at the level that you're already making, right? So really, again, doing your research and using these salary websites to help you discover the roles that are right for you based on your experience level, based on what you bring to the table, but also in order to feel confident enough to even do that, you have to do what I just said before, which is like stop discrediting your experience, right? And so then from there, once you find those roles that are already paying at those levels, look for those opportunities, focus on only those. Like, how often do you guys find yourself like, oh, I'm just gonna apply for this other job. It's not really what I want, but at least it'll get me into this industry. Don't do that, because then you're like, oh, now I don't want to take a pay cut, but you're going to have to, because that's how much that other role pays, right? So it's like, don't discredit yourself. Like, go after the roles that you know are paying at the level that you want to make, and then rise to the occasion and be the top candidate. Own your experience throughout the entire hiring process, because a lot of times people think that the negotiation or being able to secure a top dollar salary starts only in the negotiation, but it doesn't. It starts with how you communicate your value. It starts with how you talk about yourself in the interview process. It starts with how you're able to showcase your track record, right? To the point that when you do get to the negotiation, they're already like, you are our top candidate. We want to hire you. Like, even though they might want to have a negotiation and say no to something, they're like, in their minds, it's like, okay, we know that after we interviewed all these people, we still want to hire you. So what do we need to do to get to a compromise, right? But that starts with when they see that not only are you the right candidate, or not only are you the one they want to hire, you're the right person to solve their problems. And you have to believe that about yourself, so that when you go into those conversations, it's just like how do we get to a place of balance? How do we get to a place where we're meeting in the middle? But again, know that you already are worthy of those opportunities that you want. Choose the right roles. Don't settle for the role that is asking for 2 to 4 years of experience, but you want to make a 50K salary increase. It does not work like that, right? Like, you have to make sure that you are going after roles where they're already at matching where you're at, right? Or higher, and really, again, rising to the occasion to be able to showcase the value that you bring to those opportunities.
Yeah, I love it. And since since we are getting to another career, we're transitioning and everything, what about the resumes? Like, I have this question that says, could you share the do's and don'ts for creating a transitional resume?
Yeah, so I think we kind of touched on this as well, and it's pretty much what we were talking about too. Like, making sure that you understand, number one, what are these opportunities asking for, right? Because a lot of times, and I think this is just advice that we've all heard, a lot of times people focus their resume on what is their career history, right? So you're like, what is my career history? What are the things that I have done that I feel proud of, that I think makes me a great candidate, that I want to be able to showcase, that I want people to know about me? But the truth is, your resume, whether you're making a career change or not, is not about you. I know that's not what we have been told, but your resume is not about you, right? Your resume is a document that communicates how you can solve the needs of the next company, or communicates that your past experience has equipped you to solve the needs of the next company. So when you make it about me, then you're not really speaking to them, because at the end of the day, like, they're hiring because they have issues, right? Unfortunately, they have problems. Or fortunately for you, because they want you to fix them, because they want you to work for them, right? So it's like they're hiring because they have issues, right? So how are you communicating that you can solve their issues through your resume? It's not necessarily about what are you proud of yourself for doing, because the truth is, if you're making a career change, the things that you might be proud of yourself for doing might not be the things that they need to know that you've done. They might need to see some other stuff. You might be really proud of yourself for the fact that you worked on some leadership or some, let's say you might be proud of yourself for being able to execute some project that you really like, your team loved, everybody loved, but maybe what they want to know is how you were able to put that DEY resource group together, right? It was not even really on your resume. It wasn't something that was on your job title, but maybe because you're going after a DEI role, you might want to start talking about that more instead. Right. So it's like when you're making this transition into that next phase in your career, really kind of take your ego out of it and really say, okay, what is it that's going to show them that I can be a problem solver? Right. And one of the ways you can do that is just reading the job description. Okay. Statistics show that most people spend 14 seconds reading the job description. And I have to say that my food doesn't even get warmed up in 14 seconds. So if my food needs more time, then you need to spend more time reading your job descriptions. Okay. Like there is no reason why you should be skimming job descriptions. Take your time. Like we don't eat cold food. Like let's make sure that we're not just coldly reaching out to these companies saying, hire me, hire me, hire me, when you don't even know why they need you to be on their team. Right. And so really take your time to read these job descriptions because sometimes we do have those real short job descriptions where they're just like, just apply it. And it's like, we don't need to spend our time on that either, right? Unless we really even know what they're asking for. But really take the time. Some of these job descriptions can be really dense, right? And instead of being like, oh, they're just asking for a lot. No, read it. Like use it as information to decide, do I even want to apply for this job or not, right? Use it as an opportunity to say, like, what are they asking for? Inside of my program, I teach something called like the highlight method that really helps you understand like how to analyze a job description. And I think that most people don't do that enough. And I think that that is a disservice because the job description is the first step to being able to be at the next company, right? The job description is the first step before you're going to be spending a year or 2 years, 7 years at this next company. If you're not even taking the first step to read where you're going to be, what are we doing here, right? And so I definitely recommend reading the job description and reading multiple job descriptions for the type of role that you're interested in pursuing next, so that you can get a full scope of what are the things that they keep asking for, what are the themes that they want me to be able to communicate, what are the qualities or skills that they keep asking for, so that I can make sure that when I'm looking at my resume, I'm showcasing that same thing, right? And so really being able to say, okay, what got me here won't get me there. Now, what do I need to showcase that will get me there? And being able to look at those bullets and say, okay, do I need to replace some? Do I need to move some to the forefront that maybe wasn't as important, but is important now? Do I need to remove the jargon? Because we absolutely don't need any abbreviations or any kind of language that people are like, I don't know what that is, right? And they're like, okay, she's probably really amazing, or he's probably really great, but not great for this, right? And that's a lot of times what happens with people who are making those career changes. They know they're amazing, they know they have the experience, but when people read their resumes, they're like, oh, maybe they should stay where they're at because they're pretty good doing what they're doing, right? But they don't really understand like why you should be where you're wanting to be. So I would definitely say like study the job descriptions, do your homework by understanding what they're really looking for, and then use your resume and read it like a hiring manager. Like if I was a hiring manager, would I want to hire me? If the answer is no, we got to get to work, right? So I would recommend starting there.
Yeah, and I loved it because I have been recruited before, and you can tell when people read about the job description because you can ask them like, why is this position good for you, right? And the answer they're going to give is like, okay, this person really read it. And I really like how you, the point of view that you gave about the resume and everything. I really loved it. I really loved it.
Yes, and I agree. I've also interviewed people for positions as well, and it's like you definitely know, and that's why I say like we have to kind of stop making a career change such a big deal, because there are people who have been in the industry that you're applying for that really aren't good with the hiring process. Like they're not reading the job description. They're not saying anything that's of relevance or that's like making the person trust that they should hire them. And so literally by doing some of these strategies that will help you stand out, people are like, okay, I don't care that you're from, actually, I'm excited. Like I've had clients who landed jobs and literally verbatim, one of the hiring managers to one of my clients said, like, you weren't the top, you didn't have the most experience compared to other candidates, but I decided to hire you because you told me what you can do for us. And that was what I needed, right? I had another client who like, she ended up getting a job, and the hiring manager was like, there was someone who had 10 plus years of experience than you. But I hired you because you were able to confidently tell me what you can do for us. Like literally, and that's what they want to know. And so just going back to what you're saying about even interviewing people, I've interviewed people and I'm like crying inside. So I'm like, no, like this is not it. Right. But then when you do talk to someone who gets it, whatever industry they're from, you're like, oh my gosh, they get it. They understand what we're looking for. This is what we need. And it makes that hiring manager feel excited that maybe they have someone who can kind of move them into this next stage or who can help them solve the issues or challenges that their team is facing. So really keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Thank you for that. And let's talk about a little bit about the imposter syndrome. So this person says, how do I overcome imposter syndrome when starting over in a new industry, even though I am a fast learner, willing to upskill, and have highly valuable transferable skills?
Yeah, well, shout out to that person for knowing what they already bring to the table. Okay. And I would say that imposter syndrome is number one, we have to first, number one, think about imposter syndrome differently. I actually, if anybody was on the one of my last conversation with imposter syndrome for Power to Fly, it was a really good conversation. And one of the things that I truly believe is that like we have to reframe how we think about imposter syndrome. I think that imposter syndrome is proof that you're already moving out of your comfort zone, right? Like you don't feel like an imposter when you're comfortable. You don't feel like an imposter when you're doing the mundane thing that you're used to doing. You only feel like an imposter when you've decided that something has to change, or that you have to try something new, or when you're thinking about entering spaces that are unfamiliar to you, right? So I feel like imposter syndrome is evidence that you're already moving out of your comfort zone. You're already deciding to no longer play small in your career. And so instead of seeing the feeling of imposter syndrome like, oh, that means I need to pause, I need to stop, I need to go back, I need to not do this anymore, I need to, bring my goals down. Just see it as proof that you're already moving forward and don't let that feeling stop you, right? And on a practical note, it's like, okay, what are the feelings that you're feeling when it comes to making this happen? Are you feeling like you're too old? Are you feeling like you're too young? Are you feeling like you don't live in the right city? Or like what is it about? I'm not good enough. I don't belong in these spaces. Like one of the things that I recommend is to name exactly what it is that you're feeling so that you can kind of bring truth to that, right? Okay, what is it that you're feeling about yourself right now that's making you feel like you don't belong in these spaces? Because that's what imposter syndrome is, the belief that you're not good enough or that you don't belong in the opportunities that you're looking for. So what is that feeling for you? And then acknowledge that. Like, all right, yes, this is scary. This is different. This is uncomfortable. But am I really not good enough? Let's be honest, right? Like, am I really not good enough for this? But also reframing those feelings. So if it's like, I'm too old, right? What about the people who are doing it already, who are older than you, or who are at your age and who are making this happen? Because the truth is, if you feel like you're too old, the truth is there are people who are looking for seasoned people at your age level, experience level, who bring the level of expertise that you want. Period. Like, and so you have to start reframing the doubts that you're having and really look for the facts, right? Like, I'm too young. Okay, but what about the people who are doing exactly what you want to do and maybe have less experience than you, or who are just as old as you? Like, who said that you're too young, right? Like, really start looking for the proof instead of the fact of the feelings that you're feeling, so that when those feelings do arise, you can start to acknowledge them and then move forward from them faster. Because it's not my desire or goal isn't to act like imposter syndrome doesn't exist or to make you eradicate it. Like, anytime you decide to take another step beyond what you're comfortable with, you're always going to feel imposter syndrome. But what I want you to be able to practice is being able to acknowledge those feelings faster, stop ignoring them, and then reframe those thoughts so that you're able to move quickly and not allow those feelings to paralyze you or sabotage your efforts.
Wow. And that really hits me, because actually when I was looking for a job, I had this interview with a guy and he was like asking me a lot of questions about myself and everything, but sometimes you don't even know how to answer the questions, like your strengths, your weaknesses. And suddenly he asked me like about leadership. And I was like, I don't know if I am a leader. Like, I don't know if I can be a leader. And at the end, he said, you know what? You have, like, he literally was it, you have to believe in yourself. Like, you have to believe that you're capable of being a manager, of being a leader. And I was like, what? So it happens. Like we really don't know until maybe someone tells us. And saying you like talking, like hearing you saying that is like, yes, I know.
No, and you bring up another point too that like that I also forgot to mention when I was going on my spill, is that outside of really acknowledging and reframing your thoughts, you have to get clear on your receipts. Okay. Like bring your receipts to the table. You need to know, like, not only why you are qualified, but what makes you qualified. Because so often, career change or not, most people are like, I'm good at this. Then you ask them why, and they're like, oh, I'm just good. Like, or like, I have all these years of experience, or I've worked with these different companies, or I just wear so many hats. I'm just so good, right? Like, I know that I'm good. And it's like, okay, are you convincing me or convincing yourself? Like, what is it, right? And so I like to say, like, you need to get so good at knowing why you're good that it always just comes to the top of your mind, right? Like you want to, like the way that I'm even here sharing I'm here talking to you and I'm talking about my advice and all that. And then I'm like, oh, let me tell you this story. And let me remind you of this thing that I remember. Like you want to be able to talk about yourself in that way. You want to be able to remember your stories, remember your accomplishments, remember the things that, that show up, that show that you have the track record that these companies are looking for. Because if you're just like, okay, I am good enough, yeah, that motivation in the mirror is helpful sometimes, but we got to get to the nitty gritty, right? Like, what is it about your experience that you can really start to bullet point and say, not even just on a resume, because I think when we think about resumes, it's like, I have to say the perfect bullet, I have to say the perfect thing. I'm just talking about literally listing out what are the things that I know make me qualified. What makes me excited about this? Why do I know I can excel at this? Like, have you ever read a job description and you're like, oh my gosh, like I can do this. Like I can do this. Write out why you feel like you can do this. Like forget the formality of what your resume should look like. Like write out why you know you can do it. Tell yourself, like, why can you do it? Because when you know what the receipts are, you're able to not, like when you have those moments of imposter syndrome, you're able to quickly move through that because you're like, you know what? No, like in my last role, I did this XYZ thing. And then when I got to this new company, they put me on that team to do that same thing again. So obviously I'm really good at it. Like, for example, I have a client who she was like, at her company, she was like, I ended up doing like 70% of the job that my team was supposed to be doing together. And I told her, I was like, isn't that proof that you're really good at what you do? Like add that to your list. Like, like, yes, you probably didn't like that. You didn't like that you were overworked, but it is proof that they trusted you enough more than anybody else to do those things. Right. So get clear on what are the things that you know that make you feel like you can make this happen, because that's what's going to help you shift out of imposter syndrome. Because the more clear you get on your value, the more competent you know that you are, the more comfortable you become, which helps you remove that imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome comes up when you're feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah. And wow. So since we're talking about this and about interviews and everything, what about references? Like there are companies that still are asking for references, right? And since we're pivoting and everything, like how do you, let's see, this question is, how do you go about getting job references to support you in your new career transition?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people do a poor job, let's say that, at references. You reach out, you first of all, you probably don't even think you're gonna get the job. You're like, oh my gosh, they're asking me for references. Who am I gonna choose? And it's like you're like flaring around, like what am I doing? Right. And I actually recommend that you want to be a little bit more strategic about your references in general. So even before, like when you're going into this process, you want to be thinking about who are the people that I would want to be my champions in this process, right? Because again, when we talk about building your tribe, building those relationships, like it's less about networking and like the weird way that most people talk about it. It's like, how you have your girlfriends or your best friends or whatever, and you're like texting them and they're like, you can do this, or I got you, or what do you need me to do? Like, you want to have that same type of experience in your career, right? And so even before you get to the references stage of the hiring process, you should already be thinking about who are the people that you want to have as your references. And you want to put them in the loop. Like, hey, I'm interviewing, like, especially when you start getting to those final stages, like, hey, I'm interviewing for this role. I just want to keep you posted on it and let them know what the role is. You know how often some references can get a call and they're like, I didn't even know that I was this person's reference. I don't even know what to say about this. Like, oh my gosh, hi. Like, you don't want that, right? Like, you want to give them the job description. You want to tell them the qualities that you want to make sure that they identify about you in that conversation, right? You want to make it super easy for them to speak about you from a level of confidence by simply just telling them how you want them to think about your experience, right? So for example, if you're going for a new career change, maybe you still want to be able to maybe you have a manager that you really are fond of. You still want to be able to have that person. You can still have that person as your reference because they can speak to you as a leader. They can speak to you in a team setting, right? Or maybe there's someone who you worked with them. They weren't like you're on your direct team, but maybe you work with them in a new capacity that is relevant to the role that you're looking for next. Use them, right? But the key is whoever you choose to use, inform them on what the role is that you're looking for and let them know why you've chosen them and what they should be able to speak to based on previous conversations you've already had with them that they should be able to like say, oh yeah, I understand. Like, I'm excited to talk about that, right? So give them every opportunity to help you win is what I would recommend.
Wow, yes. There are a lot of comments here, and there is one of my recruits that says, OMG, I need to hear that. It's so hard to escape that feeling at times. This was when you were talking about imposter syndrome. It's so hard to escape that feeling at times, but I refuse to give up after putting in the hours and lack of sleep to be where I feel I deserve to be. So thank you, Maricruz, for that comment. So we have 8 minutes left, and I don't know, how can we connect with you?
Yes. I am, you can connect with me on Instagram. I'm at the new employees. I'm also on LinkedIn at Adunola Adeshola. And you can also find me on my website, employeeredefine.com. And if you are, I know I've talked a little bit about how I support my clients. So if you are interested in working with me, we are accepting new clients inside my Career Define coaching program. So you can learn all about that on my website and look into that as well if that's something you're interested in.
Awesome. Perfect. So anything else you would like to add before closing this?
I think I said something like this earlier, but I think if you can walk away with one thing, I would say, don't downplay yourself, because when you downplay yourself, you give other people permission to downplay you. And so it really starts with you identifying what is the value you bring to the table and owning that so that you can really know that when you get these opportunities, you deserve to be there. And it wasn't like, because a lot of times when you make these changes, like you can feel like, oh, was it a fluke? Did I just get lucky? Like, are they just taking a chance on me? But I want you to get to the place where when you do get that job, you got it and you know you got it because you deserved it, you are capable of it, and you are qualified to be able to excel in those opportunities.
Wow, I really appreciate your time with us. Like, I have learned a lot. Like, I have been recruiting people and everything, but like listening to you and the transitioning and everything is kind of amazing. How can we lose opportunities because we don't think we can be good at them? And listening to what you have said and everything is it really motivates, at least at me, to me, because it's amazing. Yeah, like, what? So something about that is like, we have to know ourselves, like what our skills are and everything. And it's really, really amazing that there's still people that can motivate us like you to give that step, to make that step. And I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate your time with us. It's so nice to have you here again. And guys, if you want to listen to this chat and learn again, please go to the YouTube channel. You're going to receive a link with the recording that we are having right now. And please don't forget to go to our website. You're going to find more chat and learns there. We are going to have more in the future. We have had in the past. You can find more about Adunola in LinkedIn and everything. And actually, we have another chat and learn with Adunola before, right? I remember that you were there. So yeah, so guys, please don't miss that up. And thank you everyone here for being here, right? And I hope to see you next time. And thank you, Adunola, again.
Yes, Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you. And I hope you got so much out of it.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.